All right, going to talk about new LSU quarterback commit Michael Van Buren, the former Mississippi State quarterback, into the transfer portal, and now is transferring to LSU. We're going to talk about what he did well last year, talk about why LSU, talk about his next steps, and then look at 4 or 5 clips of Van Buren demonstrating what he did well last year, trying to showcase his ability and what he displayed last year. So let's talk about Van Buren first, then in 2 or 3 minutes, we'll look at these 4 or 5 clips of footage. So Michael Van Buren last year, 1,886 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, yards per attempt was 7.4, and completion percentage was 54. So not great numbers by any means, not bad, just kind of what you would expect maybe from a true freshman, but I thought he flashed and played well against some really good teams, against some of the top teams in the SEC. I thought he was a bright spot for Mississippi State in a not great season. I thought he played well and kept them in some games that maybe they shouldn't have been in. And yeah, some of his stats were against garbage time per se, but I still thought he played well against these teams. His first start was against Texas. They were down by only 1 touchdown at the half. Had over 300 yards against Georgia and 3 touchdowns. Had 3 touchdowns against Texas A&M. Had 280 yards against Ole Miss. So put up some good numbers against some of the better defenses in the SEC. So why LSU? Why Van Buren to LSU? He probably could have gone to other places and for sure have been the guy. But why go to LSU? Well, number one, I think it's good development. He gets to sit behind Nuss, gets to learn behind Nuss, gets to build on a good season from last year and learn behind Nuss with quality experience and compete for the starting job in 2026. And for LSU, if an injury happens, now you have a guy like Van Buren who has experience in the SEC, some quality experience as well. And I think there's something with Van Buren. I think he showcased some really good potential last year that should have you excited. Like, I was surprised when he entered the transfer portal. I'm surprised Mississippi State let him go. Now, those coaches are way smarter than me, and we have no idea what is going on behind the scenes. But I think he's a really good add for LSU. Injuries happen. Nuss got banged up some last year, fought through it. But it's nice to have a quarterback that has experience like Van Buren. So what does he do well? Well, there's a few keys I want to talk about. We're going to showcase this in film here in a second. But his most comfortable type of play and what he did well last year was play action. Very comfortable off of play action. He had 9.6 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. We're going to see all these plays here that we're going to watch here in a second. The majority, if not all of them, are all off play action. Whenever he didn't use play action, his yards per attempt were only 5.9, had 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So struggled whenever he didn't have the assistance of play action to get defenses out of position. Key number 2, what he did well, he made some contested throws, which is pretty impressive. Some downfield throws, some really good coverage that he was able to fit the ball into nicely. And then key number 3, he utilized his legs, when called on, from some quarterback design runs to some scrambles throwing on the run. Now, he didn't have a ton of rushing yards. I think he was in the negatives, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of that is sack yardage, but he's still a good athlete. He's still athletic, and he's still able to, if you're an offense, you're able to kind of build around that. So what are his next steps? He was good off play action. He has the ability to fit the ball in contested throws, and he's athletic to run or to scramble when needed. So where his next step, or his biggest next step, in my opinion, is improving versus the blitz. Now, he got thrown to the fire. I think his first few starts, were against Texas A&M, Georgia, like thrown into the fire. And they were blitzing him fairly often. His completion percentage was only 42% against the blitz. Yards per attempt are 5.8. So some big improvement needs to be there whenever defenses are trying to confuse him and trying to blitz. Again, he was a freshman last year. It's understandable. His other key to take his next step is to improve when he is dropping straight back, not relying on play action. Again, we talked about his throwing off of play action, 9.6 yards per attempt, only 1 interception. Not using play action, 5.9 yards per attempt, and 6 interceptions. So going through his read, process, and defense, which I thought he did better as he developed, as he went along. If you go back and watch the game against Ole Miss, he had several throws where he's like reading the defense, going through his progressions, and hitting his receivers. So overall, good get for LSU. You get a quarterback with experience. You get a quarterback that can develop, a quarterback that can start at a lot of other Power 4 schools, or at least compete for the starting job. So you get him to develop and to learn behind Nuss, and it helps that you have a quarterback with experience. So with that said, we're going to dive into a few clips showcasing what he did well last year. And if you're an LSU fan, you haven't seen this channel before, please consider subscribing. We put out a lot of LSU, or a lot of SEC quarterback content. We have a lot of Nussmeier content from last year. So if you watch this channel, y'all know that we are Nussmeier fans, and I think next year is going to be a big step for him, a big opportunity for development. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into these 4 or 5 clips that we have of Van Buren, and then we'll wrap this video up. So we got 5 clips of Van Buren that we are going to watch. And LSU fans, if you haven't seen the channel before, this is broadcast footage, so I do apologize. It's not the best quality as far as like breaking down defenses and X's and O's. but does a good enough job getting the point across. So these first few clips are going to be the example of Van Buren being comfortable off play action. Very good off play action, right? Again, 9.6 yards per attempt, or 9 point something, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. So we're going to see quick play action. Deep ball against Georgia's 13-10 or 13-3 right now. Mississippi State's able to, I think, score on this drive, actually, but it's a good example of Van Buren on play action. Eyes downfield, quick play action, gets the defense out of position. Safety moves over here, even though we can't see at the time. Oops, I'm sorry. Safety moves that way off that quick play action. I apologize. And then a deep ball to the right side of the field. We can see the deep DB for Georgia over here. Good job by the defender just beating him as well. But good example of Van Buren push the ball downfield, going off of play action, especially against Georgia. Again, we talked about him having success against Ole Miss, success against A&M, success against Georgia, even if it was some garbage time at times. Still had to do it, right? So here's a Mississippi State against Ole Miss. And now this is another play action, very similar play. We're going to see him throw it downfield here. Good coverage off the start. As quarterbacks were taught, if he's even, he's leaving. So good job by Van Buren seeing that. Again, notice they didn't blitz either. We talked about how much better he is whenever they didn't blitz, and the improvement area is against the blitz. But a good throw and fairly good coverage. Pretty good example of a contested throw downfield off of play action. And here's the last clip we'll watch. Actually, no, this is play action. We got a few more clips. This is another play action clip against Ole Miss here. And this is really good coverage. This is a good example of throwing a good, accurate ball in a contested throw. Or a good example of a contested throw. Accurate ball downfield. Only your receiver can catch it. Throws to the sidelines. Again, you have 2 yards to the sideline. Really good throw there by Van Buren. So far, every throw we've seen has been off play action, which is good, right? But it shows us his development is there as well. Here's another touchdown from Van Buren. Okay, so this was that same drive as the first clip, I think. So a good example of him rolling out and throwing the ball downfield. So Van Buren isn't some type of Lamar Jackson type athlete or let's go ahead and move down here or some type of super athletic quarterback, but he's a good enough athlete to move around, maybe like a Joe Burrow type athlete where he can move around a little bit, utilize his legs if needed to, throw on the run, and then of course you can utilize his legs in the run game as well. His quarterback design run ends up being a touchdown. They took the lead right before half here. Let's see, did I press play? Let's see. Yeah, so again, I think he had maybe negative yards rushing last year in total, because if you include the sack yards, but he is a good enough athlete where you can utilize him in the run game if you need to. Here's him coming upfield, ends up scoring a touchdown against Ole Miss. So main takeaways from Van Buren as far as what he did well last year: play action, play action, play action. Did well against teams that they had no business probably having success against. And then he was able to make some contested throws, which I thought was pretty impressive, especially for a true freshman. Areas to improve on against the blitz, which, again, watching a quarterback like Nussmeier and being able to sit behind and compete in practice, you can develop, and then being able to throw without the use of play action. So LSU fans, I do want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Van Buren? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your expectations for him? What do you think about the 2026 season, that he'll be competing for the job, and then even next year, right? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, we're just a big SEC quarterback hub. We put a lot of SEC quarterback content from these breakdowns to different previews to recaps, and then we have some fun stuff coming up this offseason, excuse me. So if you like this type of SEC content, please consider subscribing. If you like this SEC QB content, like the video, share. It helps us grow. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you next time. Peace.